Hi, welcome to this week's episode of In the Hoods. This week, we're going to be talking about the Manhattan Valley sub-neighborhood of the Upper West Side. Now, this is a relatively small area running from 96th Street on the south to Broadway on the west and north to 110th Street, east to Central Park. And this area was named because it actually is a natural depression in the geography of Manhattan. The Upper West Side was really made up of a lot of streams. 96th Street was actually a natural stream which ran into the Hudson River, as was 110th Street. You had this rocky area, kind of elevated area up in Morningside Heights north of 110th Street. So Manhattan Valley was really a depression, a natural depression. It has an interesting history. It used to be called the Bloomingdale District for Broadway, or the old name for Broadway, not the store, which was, as we noted in our last episode on the Upper West Side, was Bloomingdale Row. It was named after a town in the Netherlands famous for its tulips, but it was anglicized into Broadway. The district itself got its name and was actually called this until about the 1950s, the Bloomingdale District. But the area was primarily settled as huge farms, Dutch farms, which grew up alongside Broadway, or Bloomingdale Row, and they were large estates with mansions, and very wealthy Dutch settlers lived here. As the city grew and things were developed, you had the Croton Aqueduct, which ran right through this land down into this area, bringing water to this newly developed city. As we noted in earlier episodes, the Croton Aqueduct was largely built by German and Irish immigrants. And they in turn came to this area as the farms were being broken up and began to settle in this area. It still wasn't heavily occupied, however, until the late 1800s, when the 9th Avenue subway came up north and came up to this area and provided a link between Manhattan Valley and the rest of Manhattan south of here. The area itself also really it was primarily tenement housing, old brownstones, and it became an area that was occupied largely after many of the Germans and Irish moved to the suburbs, and in came a new immigrant group, largely Puerto Rican, who settled in this area. And it was unfortunately, many of the brownstones became very run down. The housing became very run down. In the 1900s, this was really known as a bad part of town. It was very dangerous. There was a lot of crime. Along comes our friend Robert Moses, whose answer to fixing New York City's problems was to raise whole neighborhoods. And that's what happened in Manhattan Valley. A number of these brownstones were raised and public housing was built, which exists to this day. These tall red brick buildings. But still, some of the old neighborhood remained, and most of the development going on in the neighborhood in the 1900s was institutional. There was a cancer hospital. There was a nursing home. I love this. There was a house for destitute women of good repute. There was a lunatic asylum, which was later bought by Columbia University, beginning a process of gentrification. But it's a sad tale, and it's a very New York tale that, neighborhoods, when they fall on, hard times, need an infusion of money. And with investment come people who want to make some money off the neighborhood, and you have gentrification. I don't know what the answer is, but they did in this neighborhood do some very some creative repairs, and they sold buildings to groups which were going to actually repair and restore them rather than tearing them down and building something new. So much of the old neighborhood still exists. Plus, much of this area is right along Central Park. So in the 80s, up until right about now, Manhattan Valley was a somewhat affordable place to live. You had a lot of Columbia students living there. Barack Obama was one of them. And I'm not sure how affordable it is now, but you could also purchase properties for not much money in Manhattan Valley. I think I saw that in 2005, Manhattan Valley was about 30% less than the rest of the Upper West Side. So who knows what it is now. But it's a story of the difference between neighborhoods, because right across Broadway, you have the Upper West Side, So neighborhoods evolve, they change, they begin their journey depending largely on their geography. And who knows where they end their journey.